for coming to this session, Lessons from El Salvador and Bitcoin and Digital Literacy in South Carolina. So I've had the pleasure of working with John and Doug and just now meeting Alan. So this is going to be a fantastic session. And one of the first questions I have is, what did you, so you were in, you've been to El Salvador, right? Alan?
No, I
You haven't
haven't.
been there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit about me, if I can. I actually have
Yes.
this thing called DACA. Have you guys ever heard of it
Yes,
before?
yes.
So I can't travel outside of the U.S. without, some prior notification. It is a dream of mine, but I'm using what I can't do to help others who can.
Well, perfect. Well, tell me, we'll start with you, Alan. What experience, passion to be in this space of digital literacy?
I love that. I had the opportunity back in college to be able to speak to other college students who didn't understand how to use the money. And more importantly, my parents, I witnessed them trying to send money to their own family in Mexico, happened to pay $40 for a $1,000 transaction to who? Just a company that wants it, right? And the more I did research, the more I figured out how money is just what we want it to be and how, it actually is used is different than it should be. And it brought me into crypto. It brought me into teaching, and more importantly, the values that we teach our kids and the people. A lot of people get the money, they pay their bills, they pay for them, they pay whatever they want, and then they save maybe. What a lot of people don't know is you get paid, you pay yourself, you pay your bills, then whatever's remaining you can use on yourself. And that's really what ultimately I'm trying to teach people and bring crypto in that as well.
I love that. So we'll paperclip your experience here in the U.S. and how it brought you to digital literacy. And then I'll start with John, and then we'll go to Doug. What experience did you have in El Salvador or prior to El Salvador that you thought, I need to bring this back to the U.S.? So I think that's more like, so Doug is more like, I need to bring this to the U.S., and you thought, I need this to be in El Salvador. So starting with you, John, what made you establish Mi Primer Bitcoin?
Yeah, hey, thanks so much for having me. So because El Salvador is the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, we believe that what happens there will set a lot of precedents. And it's really important that these are positive precedents, right? Like I don't think success is possible without a strong foundation of education. I think education will be the foundation for the development, for the adoption of Bitcoin, not just in El Salvador, but in the world. And because we believe in the importance of grassroots education in El Salvador, I've lived there for a little bit more than a year, since a little bit before the law went into effect. And our philosophy is that we don't have to wonder where we'll be next, who will be next. If we do a good job in El Salvador, everywhere is next, right? The eyes of the world will be on El Salvador for better or for worse. We get to decide, and it's a small enough country. It's 6.5 million people, which I think is comparable to the state of South Carolina. That it's small enough that we could put our thumb on the scale. It's small enough that we, a small group of people really can make a difference there, and that will ripple throughout the world. So we see it as this incredibly high leverage opportunity to effectively change the world by creating a strong educational foundation for Bitcoin adoption in the world's first country to adopt it.
And I want to add one more question for you, John. What is so different about Mi Primer Bitcoin compared to other forms of digital literacy?
So El Salvador is a bit of a unique situation in that, so I'm from New York originally, and I bought my first Bitcoin when I was living in New York, and I have plenty of friends that own Bitcoin but have never used it. El Salvador is almost the opposite in that there's many people who use Bitcoin, but it's not it's because they're a cashier at a store that accepts Bitcoin or something like that. So they use Bitcoin without ever understanding it, without ever being educated on it. So we focus on, our classes are focused on interactive. So in person, part of the class is we gift Bitcoin to the students essentially, right? They download a wallet or Lightning wallet. We send them a little bit of Bitcoin. They get to practice sending and receiving. So one of our teaching philosophies is to make the intangible real, to show rather than tell whenever possible, because that's the context there in El Salvador. The context is whether you like it or not, your Bitcoin's part of your life there, right? Which is a little bit different from other education, digital literacy, or with Bitcoin in other places, maybe could lean a little bit heavier on online, where I think El Salvador needs to lean heavier on in-person instruction than other places would. Not to say that there isn't room for both, but I think it's especially important in El Salvador, the in-person education.
Great, thank you. And Doug, lessons from El Salvador, related to Bitcoin and digital literacy. What is it that you're passionate about now that you saw there, or even before going there, that you would like to apply here?
I've been teaching Bitcoin in South Carolina through the Charleston Bitcoin meetup for roughly a year, and I've been trying to find different material that would be easy to digest, that's non-technical. Anybody who's a no-coiner, they would find that it would be easy to figure out what Bitcoin is and how to protect it and how to spend it and use it. And so here, everything's grassroots. There's no school teaching Bitcoin in the United States, and it's going to meetups, it's talking to friends, and so it's all grassroots. And so when I went to El Salvador and learned about Me Premier Bitcoin and what Bitcoin Beach is doing at the grassroots level, I was a little disappointed that El Salvador as a government was not actually implementing all of this education, because Bitcoin is a risky asset. It's a bearer asset. You screw up, it's gone. And I was kind of wondering, why is that? Why didn't they do it? And I actually got a really good answer. That it's basically, they did it to provide freedom to the person to explore, and it's the Wild West there. And they're giving everybody the reins to decide what they're going to do, if they're going to use it, if they're going to learn about it. And part of that answer is that they don't have that much money to go around. They're building infrastructure. They're trying to clean up the streets. They're, when we were there, coming from first world rose-colored glasses, I was like, where's the education? We asked many government officials, where is it? And we would get little teeny answers like, oh, there's a video that's out on the website somewhere. We never got an answer where that video was. But then I started thinking about it a little bit more, that there in El Salvador with groups like Me Premier Bitcoin and Bitcoin Beach, with what they're doing, is the same exact thing that we're doing here. It's grassroots, and we're having to build it from the ground up. So I had to take those rose-colored glasses off and realize that, what they're doing is amazing, which I already knew it was amazing, but they're doing the same thing. And so there's, it's that synergy thing that we're trying to implement here, that we're basically going to implement what they've built ahead of us. We're walking on, or we're on the shoulders of giants, basically, trying to teach their plan, which works, and bring it here.
And you just said it. Freedom. This whole system provides freedom to whoever uses it. And in other sessions talking about El Salvador, also the word freedom. And I didn't know if you knew this, but El Salvador in Spanish means the savior. And I think it's super interesting and just beautiful to make that correlation of, what's going on with the country and how everyone's being freed in many different ways, with this new currency and also with this new way of life and hope of what's going to happen next. And I wanted to throw in really quickly, my investment in this whole thing. And it's, you know, I have the digital economy ecosystem project that's funded by the USDA, and I hope that Mi Primer Bitcoin, once it's translated in English to, is it already or not yet?
It's in process.
It's almost there. Awesome. So that hopefully we can pilot it. And I hate the word pilot. I like it and I don't like it. But we want to pilot it to absorb that and part of the digital economy ecosystem so that we can go ahead and start that, because it's of utmost importance, because we've got this rural brain drain and youth exodus because, again, hope, that loss of hope, and they want to move to different places. And correct me if I'm wrong, but El Salvador at one point, many of the people, their dream was to leave, and now that's changing. Yes?
Yeah, in fact, we work with a couple of people in Mi Primer Bitcoin who were born in El Salvador, spent most of their life out of El Salvador, outside of the country, and have returned because they see a lot more hope in the country. A lot of it is around Bitcoin, and they want to help, which is why they've, you know, why they've come to a project like Mi Primer Bitcoin to help there. So yeah, I think you know, the things have changed pretty dramatically, pretty quickly in El Salvador, specifically with that hope despair sort of line. It's people look forward to the future there.
Very good. So I'm going to go back to Alan, and hopefully everyone else on the panel can weigh in. So what tools or relationships have you found to be indispensable in your mission to do what you all do? I know your roles vary a little bit, but with all of the same desired outcome. So what tools or relationships have you found to be very useful? And the reason I'm asking this question is so that those in the audience could take notes, and if they also are invested in education, and or even if it's just to a friend or in their business, what is useful to bring people in, or how can they connect with you?
Great question, actually. One of the biggest things we've taken away is how important transparency is in this, and simplicity. The problem is to have Bitcoin and all cryptos to really be more known and used is how can you get someone like your grandma to come into play, right? The second you can, it's going to happen. And as long as we can simplify something, it's tough because a lot of us like to use big words. Oh, yeah, so the proof of work, yeah, it's really helping the off-chain analysis as we work through the workflow. And it's like, no, it's just say, yeah, your transaction is being recorded and it's safe in a network, right? Let's not overcomplicate it. So it really comes down to the simplicity of it all. When someone comes up to us, those who do know what's happening and what's going on, do your best to remember where you were at. One of the things I have to remind myself all the time is I've been in this for a couple of years. So to me, I've already kind of forgotten where I was when I first started. So when like my own peers, my own clients, people in the industry come and ask me some simple stuff is like, how do I mine? It goes, oh, that's right. You're starting out. Let me help you out. Let me walk you through. Hey, let's have a Zoom meeting. Not only a Zoom meeting, but come on down, join us, connect. Oh, you don't know that? Let me show you this. Here's a great. So as long as we continue to use that transparency, continue simplifying, I think we'll get there. And as long as we have simple UIs for what we use, you know, the reason I have an iPhone, I have two, is not because I like iPhone. It's just I've learned to use it. It's easy. I don't have to think about it anymore. So the reality is, you know, an Android is just too difficult for me, and maybe I'm not smart enough. But the reality is I just use it because I know how to. My parents use it. I gave them an Android, and they go, I don't know what's going on. So if you don't scare somebody, I think that's what matters. If you simplify, that's what matters. And if you take the time because you love it, they'll see the love, and they'll give it a chance. It ultimately comes down to how it's presented and what you're willing to share in such a way that they can get it. And I think that's what really matters, transparency and simplicity.
So again, we think our most powerful tool is to show people, right? To show rather than tell. And we do that in a variety of ways. So we have all our courses are aimed at people starting their journey, right? So we have just intro classes, which are just 90-minute classes. We also have a 10-week diploma program, which is what we hope to bring here to South Carolina. We also have meetups. So in different cities, once a month, we have a Bitcoin meetup. And the way that we run that is we give $5 in Bitcoin, in this case, to everyone that are the first 100 people that come to the meetup. And we negotiate a discount if you pay with Bitcoin at that place. And what we're really targeting, anybody could come. So people come that are deep down the rabbit hole and they know everything about Bitcoin. But many people come, many Salvadorians come. So everything's in Spanish and everything is at affordable places that Salvadorians frequent, right? Like that's our target demographic. Salvadorians who are new to the space. And we walk them through if we have to, downloading the wallet, receiving their first sats, making their first payment. So the idea is that they actually use Bitcoin in the real world, in a safe environment, right? Because there's fear. People who have never used Bitcoin, they think that it's more complicated than it is, right? It's actually, you could always learn more, but to just use it, to know the basics is very achievable for anyone, right? You don't have to be an expert in technology or anything like that to see the benefits of Bitcoin. So we try to demonstrate as much as possible, and we try to encourage people to actually use it. At other times when we've had classes, sometimes we have community classes, and we might go to a rural community and teach everyone in the same day. So we might teach like 200 people in that community at once, and we give a little bit of a bonus to everyone, right? So we've seen just on its own that merchants that receive the class and have a shop across the street have started accepting Bitcoin that day, right? They're like, oh, there's a bunch of people that just got some Bitcoin. I'll take it off their hands for them. This is cool. So
and John, you guys you've invested in quite a few cell phones, some smartphones, and you give away phones to like the top students, right?
Yes. So at all of for the diploma graduation, which is our 10-week course, the top student in each class gets a cell phone. That cell phone actually has, now the cell phones that have been donated to us were donated by Stackwork, which is a Bitcoin company. You could do some tasks on the phone to earn sats. So yeah, it's just another way of showing rather than telling, which is like a core part of our philosophy.
Thank you. And Doug?
The Stackworks thing was great.
Yeah.
We were in Ataco in the mountains in El Salvador, and one of the guys that was with us with this graduation ceremony was the ATM owner, I believe, in Guatemala. Honduras, yeah. And he went to a couple street vendors and was showing them Stackworks so they could earn $3 to $5 extra a day. And there, it's significant. So here in the States, I guess what I'm trying to do in South Carolina is a baseline education, because that's how I see implementation growing on a grander scale. And so, the SCETA organization, parent organization of this conference, we sponsor 5 different Bitcoin meetup groups around the state. And I would say that we're sort of decentralized, but there's different members throughout the groups that are doing their own thing to implement Bitcoin. Dee over there in the corner passes out that Oshi app, or I will pass out the little Bitcoin book to people. Dennis will go to every server he meets at every restaurant and show them the wallet of Satoshi and send them tips on it, and tells them he'll pay him double than he would have in cash. And then one of the other things, my I guess, passion project that's coming up is we're trying to implement a Bitcoin circular economy project here in South Carolina that implements basically what they've done at Bitcoin Beach, but also includes a Bitcoin mining facility that's injecting Bitcoin into the community through earning it, as opposed to having to receive government money or donations on a constant basis. So that's something I'm fleshing out. So we're all doing our parts in different ways.
So as you know, we look at digital literacy not only in South Carolina but any part of the world. There's still a lot to be done, and they all have said it. You know, if you lead and guide through humility, and passion and simplicity and authenticity, then it goes a long way, and I think we'll achieve what we'd like to achieve. Are there any questions? Yes.
What are you teaching other than how to use it? Like, are you teaching about like blockchain, or are you just teaching them like basically like a Zelle? You know, this is a transfer of money. You know, what exactly are you teaching?
This for everyone. For
Yeah, whoever wants to.
We'll go with the educator first.
yeah, so we teach all of our courses we teach the same. We start out with basic financial literacy. What is money? How have we arrived to this point? And then we talk about Bitcoin. So in the diploma that I talked about, which is a 10-week course, the first 3 weeks we don't talk about Bitcoin. We just talk about the current financial system, how we've arrived at this point. And then we touch on a little bit of everything. It depends whether it's the one-off class, you know, we can't go very in depth, or the 10-week course where we could go a little bit more in depth. But we try to touch on the most important thing that we prioritize is how to actually use it, right? So if we only have 90 minutes, then that takes up a big chunk of it. If we have more time, then we talk about the importance of it, right? So the philosophy behind it, behind centralization, decentralization, the importance of having control over your money, and in the context of El Salvador, because it's very present in people's minds, the situation in countries like Venezuela or Nicaragua, where people have less control over their money. So those are very strong examples for people there about why this is important, why this is empowering, why they don't need to ask permission to store value, to spend value. And that resonates with people there in a way that I think wouldn't in a country like the United States, where it's not a present threat where people think like, oh, you know, I might not be able to send my money to the NGO that I like or whatever.
Well, how do you address the volatility?
So we're kind of out of time, and I want to make sure everyone has lunch, but I strongly encourage you to connect with everyone here at up here as the panel. You have a workbook also on display. So please connect. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to be respectful to your lunchtime and so you can make to the next sessions. But please connect with everyone on the panel. You've got their names. Follow them on social media if you can. Thank you so much for coming to the session.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.